King Valtor stood tall in the crystal hall of his palace, his golden robes flowing behind him. His face was stern as he looked down at the gathering of his advisors. The war between Zelthara and Earth had ended 2 cycles ago, but the wounds were still fresh. Earth had survived, unexpectedly. Worse, humans had earned the respect of the galaxy, and now came the part he hated most: diplomacy. "We must show trust," his advisor whispered. "They offered peace. We must return it." The king narrowed his dark eyes. "Then they shall have a gift." He looked across the hall where his youngest daughter, Princess Sarika, stood in silence. Her silver skin shimmered under the moonlight, and her long braids were woven with beads of starlight. She was graceful, intelligent, and, in the eyes of the court, flawed. She had no heir, no future. She was labeled infertile by their high-born science, and so she was the perfect symbol to send away. A quiet message: "Here is our kindness, but we give you nothing important." Sarika bowed her head as her father approached. "You will go to Earth," he said without emotion. "You will learn their ways. You will represent us." "And if I refuse?" she asked softly, her voice calm but firm. The king did not answer. He didn't need to. Her silence became her agreement. Earth was louder than she had imagined. Lights blinked across the skies. Buildings stretched high like trees made of glass and steel. Machines flew through the air, and everywhere she turned, humans smiled with curiosity, not fear. She was received with honor and respect. No golden cages, no forced rituals, only questions and warm welcomes. Her official guide was a man named Dr. Elias Ward, a xenobiologist and cultural envoy. He was not a soldier, nor a politician. He was tall, lean, and dressed simply in navy and gray. He smiled easily, but his eyes were sharp with thought. "Princess Sarika," he greeted with a nod. "Welcome to Earth." She studied him. "You are not what I expected." "And what did you expect?" Elias asked with a small smile. "Someone louder." That made him laugh. "We have plenty of those, but I prefer learning to shouting." The weeks passed quietly. Sarika was given a private suite in the human capital. She attended councils, cultural events, and science labs. She watched children play and old people laugh. And all the while, Elias stayed by her side, asking questions, listening to her answers, and offering knowledge in return. He treated her with respect, not like a fragile statue or a distant alien. He showed her things she'd never seen before: music made with water vibrations, food grown in vertical gardens, animals with human-level emotions. But the thing that surprised her most was not the technology. It was how humans valued freedom. Even simple ones. One night, as they watched Earth's moon rise from a quiet balcony, Sarika asked, "Why did your kind not take our surrender when you had the chance?" Elias sipped his tea before answering. "Because your kind didn't ask for war. You asked to be understood. We made the mistake of answering with weapons. Understanding came later." Sarika looked at him. "You speak like a scholar, not a warrior." "I'm both, just like you." That surprised her. No one had ever said that before. In secret, Elias studied her biology. Not to harm her, not to prove anything, only to understand. As a xenobiologist, he had scanned many species, but Sarika's genetic map was unusual. When he first read her fertility markers, he frowned. "This doesn't make sense," he murmured to himself. Zeltharan science had marked her as infertile, but based on Earth's genetic tools, she showed no signs of damage. In fact, her genes were strong, resilient, adaptable. Could it be that their science had misunderstood her? He didn't bring it up, not yet. He didn't want to offend her or cause trouble with the Empire. Instead, he continued learning about her culture, her traditions, her dreams. And slowly, Sarika began to smile more, to laugh at human jokes, to ask questions of her own. She had always been graceful, but now she was becoming curious. One afternoon, Sarika visited a human orphanage. She watched as children of many races played together, some with mechanical arms, some with different skin colors, some born of mixed worlds. A little girl tugged at her long silver robe and asked, "Are you a star lady?" Sarika knelt down. "No, I come from a place where the stars are simply home." The child giggled and hugged her, and Sarika's eyes softened. Elias watched from the doorway. He didn't say anything, but in that moment he realized something. Sarika wasn't just a diplomat. She was changing, and Earth, in its strange, noisy, beautiful way, was becoming her second home. Princess Sarika stood in the botanical dome of the Earth Science Institute, watching plants dance under artificial sunlight. The air was warm and filled with the scent of flowers from 3 different planets. It was peaceful here, unlike the noisy world outside. Dr. Elias Ward walked beside her, holding a small data pad. "These plants," he said, pointing to a glowing, blue vine, were grown from seeds that survived a meteor impact. They adapted, they changed. Sarika smiled faintly. "Like your people?" Elias glanced at her. "Like anyone who refuses to be broken." There was a quiet moment between them. She wasn't sure when they stopped talking like strangers. Earth had changed her, but Elias had been the reason she felt safe in that change. He respected her mind. He listened. That was rare. Even back home, I thought every morning Elias brought her a cup of hot earth tea, always a different flavor. Some were bitter, some sweet, some strange. He called it a ritual of peace. At first, Sarika thought it silly, but soon she looked forward to it. Over time, their conversations deepened. They talked about more than culture. They spoke of art, history, and dreams. Sarika told him about her childhood on Zelthara, how she had studied war tactics but always loved poetry. Elias shared memories of camping under Earth's open sky with his sister before she passed away. They laughed. They argued. They learned. One day, while walking along a lake, Sarika turned to him and asked, "Why don't you fear me?" Elias raised an eyebrow. "Should I? I am a daughter of the Empire. My father led fleets. My voice commands respect." Elias nodded. "But you are also someone who stops to feed birds, who worries about orphans, who listens." Sarika looked away. "Back home, I was less." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "I was the princess who could not give the Empire an heir. The silent daughter, the broken one. That's why I was sent here. To be given away." Elias stayed quiet. Then he said softly, "You are not broken. Maybe your people just didn't know how to read you right." Later that night, Elias sat alone in his lab, rechecking her genetic records. What he had found earlier still bothered him. According to Zeltharan medicine, Sarika was infertile, unable to carry royal offspring. But Earth's genetic system saw something else. Her DNA wasn't flawed. It was simply different. Zeltharan tests looked for one specific marker to prove fertility. But Elias found another marker, dormant, subtle, but active in Earth's environment. It reacted to human hormones, compatible, alive. In theory, she could carry a child, but only one with human traits. He stared at the data, confused and amazed. Did they exile her? Over a mistake? He whispered to himself. But he didn't share his discovery. Not yet. Meanwhile, Sarika continued to explore Earth. She visited schools, museums, even spaceports. People no longer stared at her with wide eyes. They waved, smiled, and sometimes even asked for photos. Children called her Star Princess. She began to feel something she hadn't known in years, belonging. But even as she grew more comfortable, her thoughts often returned to Elias, his kindness, his silence, his steady presence. One evening, after a long cultural meeting, Sarika invited Elias to join her on the sky deck of her residence. The stars shone brightly above, and below them the city hummed quietly. "You seem tired," She said as he sat beside her. Politics drain me, Elias replied. I'm better in a lab. She chuckled. You always say that? Because it's always true. There was silence again. Then Sarika asked, Have you ever wanted something impossible? Elias looked at her carefully. Yes, but sometimes the impossible just needs a new point of view. She nodded slowly. I've been dreaming lately. Of a child. One with my eyes, but human hands. I don't know why. He hesitated, then said gently, Dreams sometimes know what science hasn't said yet. She turned to him, eyes searching his face. Is there something you're not telling me? Elias paused. I found something in your test results. I wanted to be sure before I said anything. Her heart beat faster. What is it? You're not infertile, Sarika. Not in the way your people believe. Your body is different, not broken, just misunderstood. She stared at him, speechless. If your biology interacts with a human's, he added, there's a possibility. A strong one. Life could grow. Sarika stood slowly. Her mind was spinning. But that means I was never useless. No, Elias said softly. You were never less. Tears welled in her eyes. Not sadness, but relief. For the first time in her life, she felt whole. The sun rose gently over the Earth City. Birds flew between tall towers. People began their day with hope and habit. But for Princess Sarika, everything had changed. She stood at her window, hand resting on her stomach. Elias's words from the night before echoed in her mind. You were never less. For years, she believed she was broken, a royal symbol without value. But now she knew the truth. Her body was never wrong. It was simply different. And Earth's air, food, and life had awakened something inside her. She looked down at the peaceful city. For the first time, she didn't feel like an outsider. She felt alive, like a new seed blooming in fresh soil. A few weeks passed. Sarika continued her duties, visiting schools, attending peace talks, learning Earth languages. But something inside her was changing. She became tired more quickly. Certain smells made her dizzy. Her skin, normally cool and silver, now carried a soft warmth. Elias noticed first. During a morning meeting, she nearly fainted. Elias caught her just in time. You need rest, he said firmly, guiding her to sit. I'm fine, she whispered. Just a little tired. But Elias didn't believe that. He gently placed a medical scanner near her wrist and frowned at the results. Without speaking, he ran more tests using his handheld lab tools. He double-checked everything. Then checked again. The screen lit up with confirmation. Heartbeat detected. Cell division active. Life present. Elias slowly looked at Sarika, his voice low and careful. Sarika, you're pregnant. She froze. Her eyes wide, her breath caught in her throat. That's not possible, she said quickly. I was told. It's real, he said softly. I wouldn't tell you unless I was sure. She stared at him, disbelief turning into a storm of emotions, shock, confusion, fear, and joy. A child. Her child. Half human, half Zeltharan. A future she never thought she could have. For the next few days, Sarika remained quiet. She stayed indoors, avoiding public events. Elias stayed by her side, helping her through each moment of change. Her body was adjusting well. The child was stable. Earth's atmosphere seemed to protect her, support her in ways no one expected. But news travels fast, even in silence. Someone had hacked into the medical records. Someone had seen the scans. And someone had sent the message back to Zelthera. Deep in the crystal towers of the Zeltharan royal palace, King Valtor stared at the glowing report with cold eyes. His advisors stood silent, watching the storm grow behind his gaze. A child? The king growled. By a human? None of the advisors dared answer. This is an insult, he continued. A direct strike against our honor. My daughter was sent to represent our grace, not to mix royal blood with savages. One advisor dared to speak. But, Your Highness, this proves she was not infertile. The royal line. Silence, the king roared. That child is not Zeltharan. It is a mistake. It cannot be allowed. He turned sharply to his defense commander. Send a retrieval ship. Bring her back. By force if needed. That child will not be born on Earth. Back on Earth, Sarika was sitting in the rooftop garden of her residence, sunlight warming her face. She placed her hand over her stomach. The life inside her was small but strong. She could feel it. It wasn't just a child, it was hope. Elias entered the garden holding a small data pad. His face looked serious. They know, he said. Sarika looked up quickly. My father? Yes. And they're sending a ship. Arrival in 2 days. She closed her eyes for a moment. He won't come to talk, he'll come to take me. Elias nodded. And take the child. For the first time, Sarika felt fear not for herself, but for her unborn child. This child was not a symbol or a problem. It was hers. It was life, and she would protect it with everything she had. I won't go back, she said firmly. We won't let them take you, Elias replied. She looked at him. You say that like you're more than just a scientist. Elias gave a small smile. I'm also a brother, and I lost my sister in a war that could have been avoided. I won't lose someone else to silence. The Earth Council was alerted. Debates broke out in every chamber. Some leaders wanted to avoid conflict. Others said protecting Sarika was a moral duty. The child inside her represented something new, something powerful. It was more than a baby. It was proof of peace, of unity. Sarika, wearing a simple Earth-made robe, stood before the Earth Council herself. Cameras broadcast her words across both worlds. I was given to you as a gift, she said, her voice steady. But I was not broken. I was not empty. I am alive. And now I carry a life that belongs to both of our peoples. She touched her stomach. This child is not a threat. This child is the future. And I will not let fear erase that. People across Earth and Zelthara watched in silence. The world was changing. The skies above Earth darkened as a massive shadow moved across the clouds. It was not a natural storm. It was a warship. The Zeltharan royal vessel, shaped like a black star, floated above Earth's orbit. Its glowing engines hummed with silent power. Inside, King Valtor stood at the front window, his golden armor gleaming under red lights. He had not come to speak. He had come to take. She has forgotten who she is, the king said coldly to his generals. Now, we will remind her. Down on Earth, alarms echoed through the human defense network. Fighters scrambled. The skies lit up with warning signals. Inside the Earth Council bunker, chaos filled the room. They've entered our airspace. Are they preparing weapons? No, not yet, but they're too close. Elias stood near the council table, his jaw tight. He wasn't a soldier, but he knew one thing. Zelthara's presence was not friendly. He rushed to Sarika's quarters, finding her standing calmly by the window, her hand once again on her stomach. They're here, he said softly. She nodded. I felt it. You don't have to face them alone. I know, but I will face them. The Earth Council agreed to a single meeting. Neutral ground, no weapons. Sarika, dressed in ceremonial Earth robes, walked into the meeting room with Elias by her side. Her steps were slow but confident. The doors opened. King Valtor entered, taller than most humans, his presence sharp and heavy. His eyes locked onto Sarika instantly. You shame our name, he said without greeting. You were sent as a symbol of peace, not to mix blood with the enemy. Sarika met his stare. I found peace. You sent me here thinking I had no future. You were wrong. There will be no half-blood heir. The royal line must remain pure. The child inside me is not a weakness, she replied. It is a miracle. King Valtor slammed his staff onto the ground. You will return with me, now. Elias stepped forward. She has the right to choose. The king didn't even glance at him. "You are nothing." Sarika stepped between them. "He is more than you'll ever be. He saw worth in me when you did not." The room went silent. Then the king spoke in a colder tone. "Then you are no longer my daughter. You are no longer of royal blood. From this moment you are cast out." The declaration echoed across both planets. Zelthara disowned Sarika. The Empire denied her name. Back in her room, Sarika sat in quiet stillness. Her eyes were open, but she wasn't crying. She was remembering. All her years trying to prove her worth. All the silence she had lived through. And now, it was over. Elias sat beside her. "I'm sorry," he whispered. She shook her head. "Don't be. I feel free for the first time." He looked at her carefully. "But you lost everything." "No," she said softly. "I lost a cage, and I gained something greater." She turned to him, eyes filled with quiet strength. "I will not raise this child in fear. I will raise them in truth." The next day, Earth declared official protection over Sarika and her unborn child. They refused to hand her over. Global messages of support flooded in from scientists, citizens, and even a few brave voices from Zelthara. "She's a symbol of change," said one Earth leader. "Not of rebellion, but of unity." Still, the threat was not over. King Valtor gave one final warning. "Return her, or war will return." Earth's leaders stood firm. "We choose peace, but we will defend life." As tensions rose, Sarika spent her time preparing. Not just for the baby, but for the future. She started speaking publicly, visiting more schools, sending messages to both worlds. She told her story with calm dignity, always ending with one sentence. "I was called empty, but I carry the future." Children began drawing pictures of her holding a baby in the stars. Mothers from other worlds sent her messages of support. And slowly, her voice became louder than the king's threats. Even some younger Zeltharan citizens began questioning the royal orders. Quiet rebellion sparked. The idea of royal blood began to weaken, all because of one child not yet born. One evening, as Sarika walked in the Earth Gardens under moonlight, Elias joined her. The air was cool and stars sparkled above them. "You know," he said gently, "you've changed the galaxy without firing a single weapon." Sarika smiled. "I didn't mean to. Sometimes the quietest voices shake the strongest walls." She looked at him, eyes soft. "Do you ever think this was destiny?" Elias looked at her, then at her growing belly. "I think destiny just needed someone brave enough to say no." She stopped walking and faced him. "Thank you. For seeing me. For standing with me." Elias touched her hand gently. "Always." Above them, the Zeltharan warship still hovered, but it no longer looked like a threat. It looked like the final piece of an old world refusing to let go, but Sarika had already stepped into the new one, and soon, her child would be born into it. The days passed quickly. Sarika's child grew stronger inside her. The Earth doctors said everything looked healthy. She felt small movements now, gentle flutters like wings. Every time the baby moved, it reminded her of how much had changed. No longer a princess. No longer bound by royal rules. She was something new now. A mother. And her child was more than a baby. It was a symbol of hope, peace, and unity between two great worlds. But not everyone saw it that way. High above Earth, the Zeltharan royal warship still waited. Silent. Watching. Inside, King Valtor paced with slow fury. His pride had been wounded. His daughter had refused his command. And now the Empire was talking, not about war, but about change. Young nobles whispered that the old ways were fading. Commoners sent secret messages of support to Sarika. Some soldiers even questioned the king's orders. This was dangerous. So, the king made a final decision. "We give them one last chance," he told his top general. "Send a message. Earth has 2 days. If they do not return her, we begin the attack." The message reached Earth like thunder. Sarika sat with the Earth Council as they discussed defense plans. The generals were worried. Zelthara's ships were large and powerful. Earth had defenses, yes, but a war would destroy cities, families, lives. Elias looked at Sarika. "We can hide you," he said. "We have underground cities, safe zones." She shook her head. "If I run, they will say I'm afraid. They'll say the child is a threat." "Then what do we do?" asked one of the council members. Sarika stood slowly. "We speak." The next day, Sarika requested a full galactic broadcast. It had never been done before. One voice, speaking to every planet in the region. The signal was sent through satellites, stations, and even Zeltharan channels. In the center of a quiet studio, Sarika stood alone. No throne, no crown, just herself. The camera blinked on. The red light signaled the galaxy was listening. She began. "My name is Sarika Valtor. I was born as a royal, trained as a soldier, and judged as broken. They said I had no worth because I could not give an heir. So they sent me to Earth, like a gift no one wanted. But Earth saw something different. They gave me time, space, respect. And in that peace I discovered the truth. I was not empty. I was not cursed, I was simply different. And now I carry a child of two worlds, a child made from hope, not hate. My father calls this child a mistake, but I call it a miracle." She paused, her voice steady, her eyes strong. "This child is not just mine. It belongs to both of us, Earth and Zelthara. We can fight, yes, or we can learn, we can grow. I ask my people, my home, don't fear what you don't understand. I ask Earth, don't give up on peace. And I ask the galaxy, don't turn your backs on something new. I do not run. I do not hide. I stand here. I live free. I live true." The screen faded to black. The speech echoed across planets. On Earth, people cried, cheered, wrote her words on walls, on banners, even on digital screens in the skies. In Zelthara, the reaction was different. The nobles were quiet. The soldiers paused. The citizens listened, and many wept. Old grandmothers whispered, "She is brave." Young warriors said, "She speaks truth." Even inside the royal ship, a few guards turned their eyes away from the king, unsure for the first time. King Valtor was furious. "She's poisoned our people," he growled. "Prepare the weapons." But then something unexpected happened. The lead general, his most trusted soldier, stepped forward. "No." The king's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" The general stood tall. "She is right. This child is not our enemy. This is a time for change, not destruction." One by one, others stepped back from the war controls. They didn't draw weapons. They didn't shout. They simply refused. The king realized in that moment that even his power had limits. On Earth, Sarika waited. She didn't know if her message had worked, but she had spoken her truth. That was enough. Then the alert came. A message from the Zeltharan ship. "We will not attack. We ask for peace. We wish to meet the child when the time comes." Sarika closed her eyes. Relief washed over her like sunlight. Elias hugged her gently. "You did it." She smiled through soft tears. "We did it." In the following days, celebrations lit up Earth and Zelthara alike. Two worlds, once so different, had found a bridge, in the form of a woman who had been cast aside, and the child she now carried. No longer a forgotten princess. Now she was a mother, a leader, a symbol of unity, and soon the child would arrive. The night was quiet. Soft stars blinked in the sky. The city of New Geneva slept under peaceful lights. Birds had stopped singing. The wind moved slowly as if waiting. Inside the medical wing of the Earth Alliance Hospital, Sarika held her stomach, breathing deeply. The time had come. Elias stood beside her, holding her hand tightly. Doctors and nurses moved quickly but calmly. Earth and Zeltharan specialists worked together. This was a historic moment, and everyone knew it. Just one more push, the doctor said gently. Sarika closed her eyes. She wasn't scared. She wasn't weak. She was ready. And then, there it was. A cry. Small, sharp, full of life. The baby was born under Earth's moonlight. Half human, half Zeltharan, with small glowing eyes, soft skin with faint silver patterns, and tiny hands that reached out to the light. The room was silent for a moment, as if time itself paused. Then applause broke out. Smiles filled the room. Nurses cried. One of the Zeltharan healers paired a prayer of peace in her native language. Elias laughed softly as he cut the cord. Sarika held the baby in her arms and whispered the name they had chosen together. Lyra. It meant light between stars in both languages. News spread across. Earth within minutes. Child of peace is born. Sarika gives birth to half-human, half-Zeltharan girl. The future has a name, Lyra. People gathered outside hospitals and government buildings, singing songs and lighting candles. On social media, artwork, poems, and messages of love flooded the feeds. Across the sea, children in schools drew pictures of Lyra with stars around her head, and even on Zelthara. The news reached every screen. At first, the High Court refused to speak, but the people did. Thousands gathered in public spaces holding signs that said, "We welcome the child. She belongs to all of us." For the first time in Zeltharan history, the citizens led the conversation. Back in the hospital room, Sarika sat up slowly with Lyra in her arms. Elias watched her with quiet admiration. He had never seen anything so beautiful. Not just the child, but the way Sarika held her, like she had been born for this. "You did it," he whispered. Sarika looked up. "No, we did it," he nodded. "She's perfect. She's strong," Sarika said, "and she will be more than a symbol. She will be the bridge between two galaxies." Lyra yawned softly in her arms, completely unaware of the storm she had calmed just by being born. 3 days later, the Earth Council hosted a special ceremony in Unity Hall. Leaders from many planets attended. Even Zeltharan ambassadors came, silent, respectful, humbled. Cameras captured every moment. Millions watched from their homes. At the center of the hall, Sarika stepped forward holding Lyra, while Elias stood beside her. A small platform rose, and Sarika addressed the galaxy once again. "This child is not a threat. She is not a danger. She is proof that understanding is greater than fear. We are different, but we are not enemies. Let Lyra's life be the start of something new." The room erupted in applause. Zeltharan Ambassador Nevak, a quiet and older man, stepped forward. He bowed to Sarika and Elias. "I came here today with questions," he said, "but I leave with hope. On behalf of many in my world, I ask for a new path, a shared future." That moment became known as the New Accord, an agreement to begin peaceful exchange programs, scientific research, and joint education between Earth and Zelthara. Later that evening, Sarika returned home to the quiet of her apartment. Lyra slept, peacefully in her arms. Elias cleaned up the flowers and messages sent from every corner of the galaxy. "I never thought it would happen," Sarika whispered. Elias smiled. "Neither did they." "I don't know what kind of world she'll grow up in," she added. "But you gave her the best start," Elias replied. "You gave her truth, love, and courage." Sarika looked down at Lyra's tiny fingers curled around her own. "I just want her to live free. You've already made that possible." That night, Sarika stood at the window, looking up at the stars. Somewhere up there, her old home still floated in silence. She didn't know if her father would ever accept Lyra. But for now, that didn't matter. She had her own family now. And slowly, the galaxy was beginning to listen. One child. One voice, one future. Earth had changed, Zelthara had changed. And in the middle of both worlds, a young girl was growing up. Her name was Lyra. She had the sharp eyes of her mother and the curious heart of her father. Her skin shimmered faintly in sunlight, just like the ancient Zeltharan royals. But she laughed like any Earth child, chasing butterflies and drawing stars on paper. People called her many things: the Star Child, the Peaceborn, the Light Between Worlds. But to her, she was just Lyra. Sarika watched her daughter run through the garden outside their home. Trees swayed in the warm wind. Flowers from both Earth and Zelthara grew side by side, bright blues, glowing silvers, golden petals that turned with the sun. Elias stood nearby, fixing a small weather scanner. He smiled as Lyra tried to catch a tiny floating drone, jumping and giggling. "She's faster than last week," he said. "She's always growing," Sarika replied. "Just like this world." It was true. Earth and Zelthara now worked together. On many projects: medicine, science, education. The two cultures still had differences, but there was respect now. And it had started with one woman and one child. That evening, a message arrived. It came through the secure galactic line, not from Earth, not from the Joint Council, but from Zelthara's royal chambers. Sarika read the message twice before she said anything. "It's from him," she whispered. Elias turned. "Your father?" She nodded. "He wants to meet." There was silence for a moment. "Where?" Elias asked carefully. "Neutral space station. No guards. Just him. And us." Elias looked at Sarika's face. "Do you trust him?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "But maybe it's time." The journey to the space station was quiet. Lyra looked out the window the whole time, amazed at the stars. "Will he look like me?" she asked. Sarika smiled gently. "Yes, in some ways he will." "Will he like me?" Sarika paused. "I hope so." They landed on Station Halos 5, an old but safe meeting point floating between Earth and Zeltharan territory. The docking bay was empty, just like the message promised. Sarika stepped out first. Elias followed with Lyra holding his hand tightly. Across the docking platform stood King Valtor. He looked older now. His once bright armor was simpler. His long silver hair had thinned, but his eyes were still sharp. When he saw Sarika, he didn't speak. When he saw Lyra, he froze. The little girl looked up at him, unafraid. "You're my grandfather," she said. Valtor blinked, as if waking from a long sleep. "Yes," he said finally. "Yes, I am." They sat inside the station's quiet hall. No weapons, no soldiers, just family. Sarika sat across from her father. Lyra sat between them, watching both faces. "I was wrong," Valtor said softly. Sarika raised her eyebrows. She never expected to hear that. "I thought strength meant staying the same. I thought purity was power. But I see now. True strength is change. And you changed everything." Sarika didn't speak. She listened. "I watched your speeches, your work, your child. You did what I never could. You cast me out," she said. "I know," he said, "and I will carry that shame." He looked at Lyra. "May I speak with her?" Sarika nodded slowly. Valtor turned toward the girl. "Do you know what your name means?" "Light between stars," Lyra said proudly. He smiled faintly. "Yes, and that is exactly what you are." She tilted her head. "Are you still a king?" He looked at Sarika, then back at Lyra. "No," he said. "Not anymore. Now I am just your grandfather." Lyra smiled and reached out. He hesitated, then gently took her hand. It was the first time in his life he had held a child without fear. That night, they sat together on the station's upper deck, watching a nearby nebula glow in colors of violet and gold. Valtor stood beside Sarika as Elias and Lyra played in the distance. "I gave you away," he said, "but you gave the galaxy something greater." Sarika nodded slowly. "We can't change the past, but we can shape the future." He looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time. Not as a soldier, not as a royal, but as a leader, a mother, and a daughter. You belong in both worlds, he said. And so does she. The next day, the galaxy received a new message. Let this be a time of healing, said the voice of the former king. Let our children walk freely between the stars. Back on Earth, life continued. Sarika returned to her home, but now there was peace in her heart. She didn't know what the future would bring. No one did. But she had seen something beautiful. A child with starlight in her eyes, running across two worlds with joy and two great civilizations, once divided by fear, now learning to build something new. Together.